Hey, this is Jen Gray, your host of Be Genuine with Jen podcast, where we discover how our authenticity is our superpower. I am so excited you've joined me for today's episode. Let's get started. Hi, friends. Happy Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, whenever you are listening to this. I hope you are doing so well. And I'm really, really excited about this episode. I think sometimes the hardest parts of our life create the biggest lessons. And in my own world, it's been kind of a whirlwind in the past couple of months with just unexpected highs, lows. And I'm sure you can relate. Just as soon as you're, heading in the upward wave, then life hits you. And so many times it's just unexpected things. And so for me, about a month ago now, my aunt passed away and it was completely unexpected. My mom is actually one of 7 siblings, so always grew up with like a massive family. And then also like life happens and we all started having kids. And so this like 40, 50 person conglomerate became there's probably like 100 of us. I don't even know how many exist now, but we all gathered recently, or a lot of us, for her funeral, and it brought up a lot of thoughts. I have been fortunate to not have too many deaths, but the ones that I have experienced have been I don't know that any hit lightly, but deep ones. Like I lost my dad in 2022 and lost my business mentor and friend in 2023, and then my aunt now in 2024, and my grandmother way back when I was in college. But I was actually going back and reading a journal that I wrote, and even like preparing for, 1 year of this podcast even being a thing and what I learned through that. And in this journal from back in 2023, I actually found a letter that I wrote, just kind of like a journal entry. I'm going to read part of that. And it was right after Jessie Lee Ward, my business mentor, passed. And it goes right along with what I want to talk about today, really like taking the baton. So if you've ever lost somebody in your life, or even just thinking about the own legacy that you're leaving to the people that you love, and what does that look like, and how can we take the baton? And one of my favorite quotes, Ed Milet says, he says, "Grief is a sign that love is greater than death." So when we grieve, it's because death wasn't just an event. Death was a reminder of the depth of love that you experienced with this person and the life that they lived. And what do you do when someone passes? You start to reflect, right? Like when my dad passed, I was reflecting on the good things, right? It's like all of a sudden the hard times didn't even matter anymore. And I think that's the whole point. So in this journal entry, it was 9/18/23, right at a year ago today, I said, I love you so much, Jessie Lee. What is building a big life going to look like without you? I never thought I'd have to find out, honestly. There's no one like you. You're as normal and as abnormal as they come. You're just like all of us, but you pushed yourself further than all of us. You loved bigger. You went out on all the limbs. The sky was your limit. Trying to download the major lessons I learned from you seems like a fire hydrant of info. The biggest shift was that I am enough. The raw, the real me, that's it. That's enough. Masks aren't needed. In fact, they will keep me from real success. That was so different from so many other leaders I heard. Loving others is first. It wasn't about how much you knew. It was about how much you gave. And hell, you knew a whole lot, but you literally gave it away for free because you wanted us to succeed. You taught that consistency and just to give more and go more. And that mindset is everything. That's the biggest shift in my life. Thanks to you, I'm strong. Life happens for me, right? And right now I'm just trying to process and listen intently on how your passing could possibly be for me. Your legacy lives on in so many of us. You would want us to live life like you. We are taking the baton and we will live it to the max, like you. You don't have to wonder if you did enough. You get to rest knowing that you did the most and left the most lasting legacy. We're taking the baton and we're loving big. And when I think about passing, and I read another meme and it said, why don't we say what we say at funerals, at birthdays, right? But that's what happens, right? We get so caught up in living that a lot of times we forget to give people flowers while they were alive. And I love that thought. And so many times since then, that to me is one of the things that I've taken on is, okay, how can I give somebody flowers and they're still alive? How can I make sure that I thank someone for the investment they made in me personally or professionally? Or how can I thank people for going above and beyond as a friend or as a mentee or as a colleague? Or again, how can we make people feel as loved as we feel on the inside? Right? Like, as if I asked you if you love the people in your life, you're like, of course. I'm like, do they know that? Like, do they genuinely know the impact that they're making on your life? Or do you just assume that, of course, they know? And I'm sure so many of you, like myself, you've experienced other people where they died way, way too young because they did not believe they had any value in the world around them, right? So they felt so alone that they literally thought that the world would be better off if they just didn't exist in it again. And I just wonder if it was different, if we just all lived with this legacy mentality where we're like, I'm not leaving anything off the table. I'm putting everything on the table, right? Like, I would rather tell you I love you 1,000 times. And listen, if you listen to my podcast, I end my podcast the same every single time. And this is something Jessie Lee taught me. Because I was at first like, oh my gosh, if I say I love you 8,000 times in a day, like, does it really mean anything? It does if there's meaning behind it, right? Like, the number of times, it's not like, oh, all of a sudden you've crossed this threshold. And if you say it this many times, therefore it's null and void and it doesn't mean anything. No, if I say I love you to you, it's because I love you, right? Like, and yes, do we love an apple some days? Do we love Starbucks some days? Yes, but love is just different. And so for the fact of being cynical, don't let it keep you from saying I love you to people that you love. And it may be awkward, right? Like, I know some people in my life, like me telling them I love you, and sometimes it's my 12-year-old son, right? When I tell him I love you multiple times a day, and he's like, I know, Mom. I'm like, okay, that's all I need to know that you know. And sometimes I get an I love you too, and those are like treasured moments because he's just in that phase, right? So again, but I'm not telling you I love you for a response. I'm telling you because I want you to go to bed tonight making sure that you know that you're loved. That's why I will tell strangers on my podcast that I love you and I believe in you and I'm cheering you on, even though I've never met you. What's the antithesis? That I don't care about you and that I hate you? Well, that's silly. There's too many people around the world that do that, right? You're like guilty until proven innocent. I mean, no, you're innocent in my world until you're proven guilty. Like, I'm going to trust you until I can't trust you anymore. And then it's like, okay, grace is a real thing. But then there's also, we have to be smart and really protect our hearts and our futures and all the things. So are you giving people flowers while they're still alive? But here's a couple of things that as I'm processing grief, I'm processing the brevity of life. And that's the first point, is that life is short. Y'all, and I say this all the time, like, so many of us are living like this is a dress rehearsal. Like, we're just like pretending and we're like, oh, one day I'm really going to go for it. One day I'm going to show up to the stage and I'm going to actually live life. Maybe you're not where you want to be financially. And that's something that I had to learn because, y'all, I'm not where I want to be financially. Let's just be super candid and real. Does that mean that I have to wait to make memories with my kids? You got to get creative, right? Like, it's the mundane becomes memorable, right? Like, it didn't cost me any money to jam out to spooky, scary skeletons and Ghostbusters on the way to taking my kids to school because it was just fun and different, right? They didn't cost any money. It just cost me having to be intentional, right? And so recognizing that life is short and, like, how can we live today to the fullest? And it's how we get our ideas out of the journals and we just start putting action steps on them. Y'all, I am the queen of having big, huge dreams. And what someone reminded me was, what if you spent 1 hour today? Maybe it's even 5 minutes. Maybe 1 hour seems like insanity. Maybe it's 5 minutes. What's something you could do for 5 minutes that's going to move that pendulum forward? It's not doing something in an entire day. It's going to bed being like, you know what? I'm living with the forward in mind. I'm moving in a direction. I'm not just sitting back and watching life happen to me. I'm moving in the direction of people that I want to be around. That's a huge shift instead of sitting back and waiting for life to happen. But we have to understand the brevity of life. I don't want to get morbid. I am getting morbid a little bit today because I think sometimes we think it's not going to happen to us, or that's so far down the road, like we're invincible. But I want you to think, like, life is short. How can we live today so that if something did happen to us overnight, we live knowing, you know what? I had a big dream still ahead of me. I didn't achieve everything, but I loved my people well today. What does that look like for you? Number 2, People matter, things don't. So I was just at a family funeral, and this family, we literally realized it's been since 2011 since we've all been together. Literally, one of my cousins said, I think the last time we were all together, you had a baby. And I'm like, a baby? Like singular? Like one? I'm like, y'all, I have 4 and my oldest is 15. Like that's how long this has been since we all been in the same room together. And when we were all in the same room and we were all celebrating the life of our aunt, sister, mom, friend in that room, it didn't matter any kind of family drama that may have prevented us from getting together before this past weekend. Like nobody cared then because it wasn't about that. And so to me, what that showed is it doesn't have to be about that. If we enter rooms and we have this central focus of, I'm going to love you well, I'm putting the agenda aside and I just want to love you well. You are a person that I want to have community with. I want to be in your life. How can I build a bridge towards that? Listen, if you are looking for reasons to burn bridges with people, you're going to find it every single day. If you are looking for ways to build bridges to people, you're going to find that every single day. You do not have to believe, and I don't even want to go here, but we are here. It's election season right now. 2024, like we'll document this. In October 2024, very, very high emotions around election season. Guess what? I don't have to know how you're voting to be in community with you. For some of you, that's a deal breaker. That's fine. You get to live your life that way. That may be the main focus of your life. For me, a person is a person, and I want to know about you. I want to know like what you love and who you are and the value that you have and like what are you good at? Like who are you? Because people matter, things don't. When Jessie Lee passed away, it had nothing to do. We didn't look at her and we're like, oh my goodness, all of her millions of dollars. And if that's what you were looking for when she passed away, you missed her whole life. Because the value of her life was not the millions that she left behind. It had nothing to do with the penthouse or the supercars or anything like that. It was the millions of people that she impacted. What is your life? Are you going to pass away and they'll be like, are we fighting over things? Or are people remembering the impact that you made? And honestly, I think that goes to show what you valued when you were alive. If the value that you had was your personal tangible things, then guess what? That's what you taught people to value in you. But if you say, guess what? All of this was just because I lived a life giving so much value to people like Jessie Lee did, then when you pass away, they're grasping the value that you left. One of the hardest things to grapple with was the fact that people in Jessie Lee's life wanted to get rid of all of the content she had out on Spaces. And for people who loved her for who she was, that felt like the biggest gut punch. And all that showed me was empathy on the fact that, man, those people missed out on the value that Jessie Lee offered. Right? All they were focused on was the money and the tangible things and the assets she had that were financial after she passed. But guess what? Y'all, life is so much bigger. Our legacy gets to be the people that we leave behind. And that's the last point. We are not our achievements. We're our impact. Like, just stop. One thing I watched in her life was she was diagnosed February 2023. Y'all, a picture of health. Literally got an MRI to show her, because based on a Tony Robbins book called Life Force, she wanted to have a baseline understanding of what her body looked like at peak health. Could you imagine going in expecting a baseline of peak health and coming out with a stage 4 cancer diagnosis? That was her reality. And somebody said, hey, you know what? Probably just need to take a big step back and just focus on your health and let your business, just let people run your business, let people run your podcast, just take a total step back. And you know what? She would have been absolutely justified in doing that. But that's not what settled well in her heart. And she's like, I don't know how many days I have left on this earth. And y'all, she did not own the diagnosis or prognosis or whatever it was supposed to be. She didn't own that. She's like, I'm dealing with it. I'm fighting it. I'm healing. I'm doing all of the things, but I'm not going to settle into that. That's just who I am. I'm now a person with cancer. That wasn't the life that she lived. And I learned so much watching her navigate her life. And go to I'm Bossly, go to her YouTube, go find her on Spotify. The People's Mentor podcast is still there. It's not on Apple Podcasts anymore. And I want you to listen, and there's still so much value that you can learn from her. I don't care if you're building a business, how you're building a business, or you're just building a life that you're proud of. What you'll learn from her is she had a wealth of knowledge, and for decades, she gave it away for free. Because her value was not in the monetary gain. Although she made tons of money, her value was in how she could help you succeed. And when you live a life helping other people get to their best life, when you go away, guess what? People get to take that baton because you've showed them how to go and duplicate that for someone else because they've experienced a life change. So when you shift your value to bank account value, to relational value, your legacy just looks different. And when I look at lives that are lived so well, there's a couple of things that are just like woven in between it. And it's all about their ability to help someone else succeed in all kinds of things. Maybe it's a pastor that is so genuine and they genuinely want to help push people forward in life and to understand their worth and their value, or it's a speaker, or it's a business owner. Like, just think about, y'all, like, what do you want to be known for? And however you want to be known for is how you've got to live. She didn't automatically get known for adding value and for living authentically and all the things what I learned was that for the first time in my life, I saw another leader who was as crazy as she was. Like, she was just all her. And to watch her like morph into different levels of her life, but it didn't matter. She was like so herself. And that was permission for me to be myself. And you're like, Jen, why you need some stranger's permission? I'm just saying. I think you do too. That's why we listen. That's why we're learning. We want to connect. We want to grow, and we want to elevate our lives. You got to be careful about the voices that you're listening into and what you're allowing to affect you. Because if you want to be a cookie cutter for someone, you are missing your true calling. You're not called to be like anyone else. You're called to be you. And guess what? You know what's really great about that? You can pivot at any time. Maybe you're heading down a direction and you're like, Jen, oh my gosh, like your heart starts to beat faster and your chest starts to feel tight and your breath starts to feel like it's harder to breathe. Because when you hear a conversation like this, your thoughts are, okay, I don't want to die right now because I'm not living a life that I'm proud of. Like, Jen, I'm not even headed the direction. I'm struggling and I'm flapping and I'm flailing and I'm treading water and I'm trying and I'm not headed any direction that I want to. Guess what? You need to take a really, really deep breath. I want you to lower your shoulders. I want you to think about how you can change one thing today to live a life that you're proud of. It may be a phone call. It may be pressing live on Facebook and sharing with the world the value that you have inside of you. Maybe you've overcome something huge and you've never shared that with the world. But if the thought of you not being here tomorrow, you're like, oh my goodness, I know this could have helped somebody. Then you're just getting that out of your head and your heart and your gut and getting it into a space to help somebody else with it. And maybe it's not Facebook Live. Maybe it's you texting a friend that you've seen on Facebook that's going through a divorce or going through a hard time or just got let go from a job. And you know that you have the capacity and you have encouragement that can impact their life. I want you to get your phone out and I want you to make the phone call. I want you to send the text. Because when you go to bed tonight, you're like, you know what? Maybe you wish the last 6 months would be different. You can't control that. You get to control today. You can go to bed today saying, I'm starting a legacy that I'm proud of. And whatever that looks like, I want you to take that next step so that you can be confident and know, remember, life is short. People matter, things don't. We are not our achievements, we're our impact. which means it does not matter what your bank account looks like or what degrees are on your wall. It doesn't take any of that to impact somebody else. It takes a heart to care and intentionally going out there and connecting with people who need what you have. And maybe that's just you showing up in a really real way today so that you can build a bridge to someone else and be that moment of glimmer and hope that they need today. And never, ever, ever underestimate the value of giving someone else hope, because they may be where you were 5 years ago and they would dream about being where you are right now. Take that and remind yourself, you are valuable, you are worthy, and you are enough. And your life is meant to be used for so much good. Every single one of you. There's not a but, comma, or anything. And as I close, I want you to know I love you and I believe in you. And that may seem crazy because you're like, Jen, you don't even know me. How on earth could that even be real? I don't know you yet. I don't know all the reasons there are to love you yet. But what I do know is I love you and I believe in you. And there's a million reasons why I will learn to love you, but I refuse to hate people for no reason. So I love you. Have the best day, and y'all keep being genuine.